morning, ladies and gentlemen. It does look like the worst situation is unfolding right now. It turns out that Britain has no defense against Iranian missiles that we could now be in range of. It does also turn out as well, Britain has deployed a nuclear submarine to the, hang on a minute, to the Arabian Sea, which puts Iran in strike range of British missiles. And it does look like the Iranians were, as we said, saving their best stuff till last. So when this conflict started, 3 years, guys, okay, 3 years. Don't make any, nobody should be making any assumptions that this conflict's going to come to a halt in any less than 3 years. When this conflict started, one of the things we said on this channel was that the Iranians will be using their cheap, disposable, old kit and equipment first, and that will be to deplete. Now, if you guys have been watching the video I shared with you guys a couple of days ago, we have this very peculiar situation right now where, we have this really peculiar situation right now where the West are sending missile interceptors that cost well over £1 million to intercept drones that cost 10, 20, 30, less than $50,000. Now, what's happened now, and we've seen this because Israel reports are that the Israeli Iron Dome failed last night, and all the long-range missiles went into Israel last night. It wasn't a good day for Israel. Wasn't a good night actually for Israel last night. From all accounts, the Iron Dome failed, so Israel's missile defense system failed, and the Iranian missiles just came straight in. Now, we've been saying this, right? And here in Britain, I've been saying this. I've been warning people. I've been writing letters to the government telling them that there is no credible air defense system that we have in the United Kingdom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my monologue. I'll give you this quick, guys, okay? If you want to leave if you've got a short-term brain, I'm going to tell you now. Do the Iranians have the ability to strike Britain with long-range missiles? Yes. Will they? No. There's no real, it makes no sense at this point to strike Britain with long-range missiles. And the trajectory of that missile, it would have to go over a lot of countries that would clearly intercept it. However, that doesn't mean that Britain is not going to be a target. So this week, in the midst of the ongoing US-Israel campaign against Iran, now in its fourth week, I think. Are we in the fourth week? I think we are. Iran launched 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles towards the joint UK-US military base in the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, which is, I shared with you guys yesterday, it's in the Indian Ocean. Now, it's a strategic outpost, around 2,500 miles from Iran's shores, which has been long considered beyond the reach of Iran's publicly acknowledged missile arsenal. Yet both missiles were fired in what appears to have been a deliberate show of force. Now, again, somebody on the, I think it was Piers Morgan. I'm pretty sure it was Piers Morgan. And he said, I think it was Piers Morgan. And he did a post yesterday on X. I don't have it. And he said something like, he was so furious, and he's like, Iran has blatantly lied about their missile capability. And I'm like, dude, are you being serious right now? Are you being serious right now? You expect countries to tell their enemies what missile capabilities they have? It's so absurd. As always, guys, listen, the Iranians now will be trying to win this war as ferociously as they can. The United States have said they're going to open the Strait of Hormuz. They're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to open the Strait of Hormuz. Like every day, something different, because ultimately, guys, this is going to lead to boots on the ground. And as soon as that boots is on the ground, that's it. You're going to see disasters and calamities and setbacks. It's unfortunately, that's the only way you can realistically deal with those threats. You can't do this from the air, guys. You can't do this from the sea. You need them booties on the groundy. Now, going back to these missiles that were fired at the UK base, neither struck the base. One reportedly malfunctioned in flight, while the other one was intercepted by a US warship using some sort of missile defense. No damage was reported on the base, and everything seems to be, they all seem to have been intercepted. The Ministry of Defence in the United Kingdom has been tight-lipped on the exact timings, though. It's understood the attempt came before the government before the government authorized the United States to use their British bases, including Diego Garcia itself. Now, the real shock for everyone lies in what this reveals about Iran's capabilities. And remember, if you're Piers Morgan, right, and all these talking heads, look, guys, let's be clear. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Like when it comes to war, guns, tanks, bombs, trains, planes, automobiles, hair products, like nobody knows more than me. Literally, guys, nobody. So when we're talking about this, you've seen all these people on the media saying, "Oh, I can't believe this! I can't believe this! Oh no! I can't believe this!" Like I look at these people, and honestly, I just think, how are you there in that job? Anyway, what this really reveals, it's not about the missiles that were intercepted and, oh no, Iran tried to do this. The reality is now that Iran has demonstrated, albeit, unsuccessfully, a missile range far greater than previously perceived. Potentially up to 2,500 miles or 4,000 kilometers or whatever it is. Now, that distance doesn't just threaten those US assets in Diego Garcia, because Diego Garcia is that way, or that way for you guys on the map. But those missiles can be turned the opposite way and fire that way. I think, that way for you guys, that way for me. And that then puts, major European capitals squarely into play. London is well within that range. Now, the Israeli Defense Force were quick to sound the alarm on Saturday evening. Sorry, Sunday today, so not Saturday. Not Sunday. On Saturday night, in a stark statement, they declared the Iranian terrorist regime possesses a global threat, now with missiles that can reach London, Paris, or Berlin. Wasn't there a song from Paris to Berlin? Anyway, so basically now these Iranian missiles can reach London. And listen, I don't think the Iranians are going to strike London, because most of their people are there, right? The Israelis, the Israeli Defense Force, described the Diego Garcia launch as the first operational use of such a long-range weapon system since the conflict began, framing it as proof, and it is, that the regime's arsenal now endangers cities across Western Europe. We really don't have any defense against this. For years, we have outsourced our security to the Americans. But this whole quagmire, guys, there's so many different aspects right now. Of what's happening. It's starting to become very difficult to understand Britain's involvement in this now. I'm still confident that very soon the conflict in Ukraine is going to start. Also, what this, the Israeli Defense Force here are saying that this marks the first operational use of such a long-range weapon. Now, the subtext of that means the Iranians have been saving their long-range stuff, their good stuff, you know, until all Western air defense systems have been depleted. So while everybody was sat there going, yes, we will fire a Patriot missile at this $20,000 drone. Boom. Yes, we destroyed that 20,000. A lot of these drones that get fired, guys, they don't even have explosive charges in them. They're literally decoys. So yesterday, well, not yesterday, when I shared a video with you guys. It was a little cartoon. So the music in the beginning of that cartoon got me demonetized because it was copyright. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to show it again, but there's a little cartoon. And in that little cartoon, there's this like little drone and he's saying, hey, I'm a Shaheed 172. I cost $20,000. And what I've actually said is that's not the case. They cost a lot more than that. Now, I'm going to go back on that. They cost a lot more than that if they've got a warhead in them. However, obviously, you know, a lot of these cheap drones are just being fired and they don't even have warheads in them. So yes, they could get down to $20,000, I believe, if there's no warhead in them, basically. And they are literally, you know, stripped down book standard with no fancy gimbal camera. They're literally flying on an, I think I've got one here. They're literally flying on a $50 GPS. No, I don't. You know, so now you understand that it's not financially viable to fire a 1.2, 1.5 million missile at a 20 grand drone. It doesn't make sense, right? Once all the air defense are depleted, right, air defense is depleted, right? Bring out the good stuff. It's like when I was when I used to work away, once a month we would have a barbecue, right? And I would always try and get the barbecue, me, JR, and Neil. So we'd always do the barbecue, right? And what we would do is, there'd be like 50, 60 people coming to the barbecue. We'd put the chicken on first. We'd put the burgers on first. We'd get everybody filled up with the chicken and the burgers. And then we put the ribeye on. So when everybody had filled their faces with the burgers and they were all drunk, that's when I'd start putting the T-bones and the ribeyes on. And then we just eat them ourselves. Kind of like what's happening now. It's quite clear to me, and I think it's quite clear to everyone, that exactly what I said would happen on the 28th, when this started, that the Iranians would use their cheap stuff, deplete air defenses, and then bring out the good stuff. Now, here in Britain, the implications are pretty sobering. London lies about 2,700 miles away from the closest edge of Iran, I guess. Now, defense experts are warning, in the event of a ballistic missile attack on UK soil, we have no defense. There's no independent system that we have in the United Kingdom to intercept such a high-speed, high-altitude threat. Our current air defenses, and we don't have many, guys, trust me, I can guarantee we don't have many. Current air defenses are geared towards drones, these little things. You know, we've spent so much money trying to deal with these. It's pointless, guys. These things are not changing the battlefield. These things are changing the battlefield and the bigger, longer range ones, right? And, you know, the stuff that goes up into space and then comes down, zero. We have nothing to defend ourselves against that. Now, there was a retired Commodore called Steve Prest, explained that, I'll share this article with you guys in a minute. He was explaining that ballistic missiles are space rockets. They launch, they go really, 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 really high up, and then they come down really, 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 really fast. And we don't have anything. Nothing in our system nothing to defeat those. Britain would likely defend on American interceptors stationed in Eastern Europe, or, you know, maybe Patriot systems that have been, maybe Ukrainian Patriot systems or something. Again, you can't, that's what the Patriot, so the Patriot missile system, that's what it was designed for. It was designed to stop these ballistic missiles, right? We've been firing missile defenses that were designed to like shoot rockets out of space. We've been firing them at these little drones and thinking we're winning. It's not a win, guys. It's absolutely not a win. Now, this development sparked urgent questions. Kemi Badenoch, we love Kemi, don't we? We love Kemi Badenoch, has called on the Prime Minister to come clean about the full details of the Diego Garcia incident and accused the government of dithering and delaying from the very onset of this conflict, which just shows to me how little everybody knows in this. Remember, very soon, potentially not next weekend, but the weekend after, or is it next weekend? I think it's next weekend, actually. No, the weekend after, the second and the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd. So that's when we could have the scenario where there's a big escalation in Europe and the Europeans say, oh, hey, everyone, it's a good job. You know, it's a good job we didn't, it's a good job we didn't deploy all our troops and all our kit and equipment to the Middle East, because guess what? We have to go and fight the Russians now. So as the oil prices are soaring, you know, shipping lanes remain closed and choked. The risk of the wider escalation in this war grows. The failed strike on British-linked bases. This is like a warning to everybody and confirmation that the Iranians are clearly not out of this fight yet. So when you get Donald Trump, and we love Donald. I think he's, you know, I would prefer Donald Trump on, you know, to be in charge than anyone else. We've got to understand that these things were always going to happen. Like 100%, there was never any, there was never any off ramp. There was never any way out of this. All this flim-flammering in the Middle East, you know, all these different, you know, people saying this and somebody saying that. I think the latest now is that Donald Trump has given the Iranians 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz, or he's going to destroy the Iranian energy grid. Well, let me let everyone into a little secret, guys, okay? You can't make threats when you're in an open war. You cannot make threats when you're in an open... Well, you can. They go on deaf ears. They go on deaf ears. Can you imagine being in a jiu-jitsu fight with someone, right? And you say, stop choking me out. Stop choking me out, or I'm going to give you a really big kick. It'd be like, dude, you do realize we're in a fight right now and that you can't threaten me with anything. Like that, you know, you can't. It's just so ridiculous. It is, guys. It really is so ridiculous. This war, it's not even remotely coming to an end. 3 years. 3 years. I would like, don't even consider anything going differently until 3 years. There's going to be boots on the ground at some point. There has to be. There absolutely has to be boots on the ground. You can't do this from the air. You can't do it from the sea. You certainly can't, although the Strait of Hormuz is water, you can't open that up just by having ships, because what you're going to do is you're going to put your ships and then you're just going to get missiles fired at you. That's not going to be good. And even if you do manage to have a 50-mile buffer zone, guess what? These long-range missiles now have, 2,000 miles, 4,000 kilometer range, at least 4,000 kilometers, if we consider that they were trying to hit Diego Garcia. Remember, we don't actually know the range of this missile. So one hand can be saying Keir Starmer's dilly-dathering. He's not getting involved in this conflict in the Middle East. The other hand could say, yeah, we can't get deployed. We can't get involved because we are going into Europe at some point. Let's not forget that, guys. Okay, let's not forget the war in Ukraine is raging on daily. I did a video and a couple of days ago, and I said, look, there's this town in Estonia. It's looking like the Russians could go and take that town very quickly. So if you've got a NATO, if you've got this conflict in the Middle East, assets and attention and everything's being sent down there, and then the Russians just go, whoop, what, vote, what? Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, guys. Nothing to see here. And this is the direction of travel right now. Right, let me jump onto the chat, guys. Yes, I was on a little bit early. I was on a little bit early this morning because, oh, hang on a minute. Google Enos is saying Trump says, yeah. Google Enos is saying Trump says Iran has 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz or the US will start destroying power plants, beginning with the biggest one first. Yeah, I mean, we just touched on that briefly. Let me get this up. Give me a second. In fact, I think I've got this. This was on X, right? Give me a second. I bet this comes up straight away on my homepage. No, that's not my homepage. That's my little drone. And I can't share that because the music gets me into trouble. Yeah, right. Let me share this. So this is from DJT. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest first. So, okay, let's unpack this then. I will guarantee that the Iranians are laughing. The Iranians are clearly laughing. The Iranians are clearly laughing at this. Do you think they care? Do you think the Iranians actually care? This is literally like the Americans saying, stop hurting us or we'll do something even worse. There's nothing, they're in a war. You know, we're starting to deal with logistics. We're starting to deal with supply chains, you know, and it's just not going to happen, guys. It's not going to happen. Do you think the Iranians are going to say, okay? No, of course not. They're in a war now. They are in a war. The Iranians will be trying to, the Iranians, they can't capitulate now. Like, look, and I am Team West. I'm Team GB. I'm, you know, can you imagine a scenario, right? Can you imagine a scenario where, like, you was in a fight with someone and then someone, they ask, like, imagine you're in a fight with someone and they say, you know, oh, you're not allowed to do that. You're like, dude, you literally started bombing my country. And look, I'm Team GB, I'm Team West, but this is what the Iranians will be thinking. The Iranians will be saying, dude, you literally bombed my country. You've killed thousands of people. And now you want us to do as we're told? You really want us to, like, not a chance in a million years is this ever going to happen. It's so absurd. It really is absurd. They're not going to open it up, guys. They're just going to say, come on then, come and bomb us. Come and bomb us and we'll fire more missiles at you. That's because that's what it is, guys. This is a war. This is what happens. You can't negotiate in the middle of a hot war. Right, I'm jumping on some... jumping on the comments, guys. Google Enos again, he's saying Tehran threatens Gulf desalination plants and energy facilities after... Yeah, there's nothing going down. There's no de-escalation in this, guys. There's no off-ramp. This is only going one way. And it's going to lead to boots on the ground. Thomas Vale is saying Estonia have buckled up defences, troops and security near Nova. I think it's Narva, N-A-R-V-A. Russians have pulled units from the Finnish border ready for a spring offensive. Yeah, it's all going to kick off, guys. It's all going to kick off. James Brook is saying, Sean, that plant is Iran's lifeline. Iranians will literally go nuts. Yes, this is a war. This is a little bit of war, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And in war, you don't win wars by like not attacking your enemy's strong points. Lord of Langwith is saying, the very same thing the West condemned Russia about in Ukraine. I don't know what context that is in, Lord of Langwith. I don't know what context that's in. Emma Green is saying that the WW3 is officially here. I think it started in 2014, guys. I do. I absolutely think this started in 2014. It's just people were in absolute denial. People were in absolute denial about this in 2014. 2015, 2016, then we had 17, 18, COVID-19, and then 2022. This has been happening for a while. And if you look back through history, you look at World War II, there was a Spanish Civil War that some people argue that the Spanish Civil War was the real beginning of World War II. So listen, guys, if you guys are jumping on for the first time, let me just give you quite a quick synopsis of what we're talking about this morning. Sorry, I've not finished. So Britain has now also deployed, let me share this. Is that, yeah. Britain has deployed nuclear-powered Royal Navy submarine to the Arabian Sea. Now, that submarine does have the ability to launch strikes on Iran. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. So I'll just read this, guys. This was from an article published late last night. A nuclear-powered Royal Navy submarine has arrived in the Arabian Sea, and with it, the capacity to launch cruise missiles, military sources say. HMS Anson, which is fitted with Tomahawk Block 4 land attack missiles with a range of 1,000 miles and Spearfish heavyweight torpedoes, left port on March the 6th and is believed to be taking position in the deep waters in the northern Arabian Sea. It would mean, and it does mean, British forces have the capacity to launch attacks on Iran if the conflict escalates. This news comes after Downing Street said on Friday that Keir Starmer had agreed to allow the United States to use British bases to launch strikes on Iranian sites that have been targeting the Strait of Hormuz. Keir Starmer had previously allowed US forces to use the bases only for defensive operations. First of all, there is no such thing as defensive operations. There's no such thing, guys. It's ridiculous. However, he has now approved an expansion of the targets to help protect ships and the shipping channel in the basis of collective defense. HMS Hanson which traveled 5,500 miles from the west coast of Australia to await orders, rises just above the surface every 24 hours to allow it to communicate with the UK's military bunker at the Permanent Joint Headquarters in London. Where are we? Now, they're saying that this is a state-of-the-art submarine that's based in Faslane in Scotland and does not have a standard periscope. Instead, it shows views on the surface on a huge television screen. Not sure why they're throwing that. However, it does have a nuclear reactor on it, which means it will not need to be refueled for its 25-year surface. I think that, I don't know why submarines have people on them anymore. I don't. It makes a lot more sense to take people off submarines, right? Why do we need people on submarines? We don't, right? We don't need people on submarines anymore. They should just be automated. So that is also, that's also come out on the news last night that Britain now have nuclear-powered submarine, at least one nuclear-powered submarine in the Arabian Sea, which has the capacity to strike Iran. I don't think it's going to be used. I don't think it's going to happen. So if you look at the world right now, if you look at how much pressure Keir Starmer's got on him, they really need this conflict in Ukraine to flare up, right? They really need it to flare up so they can say, we don't have the manpower. All our resources are going to protect Ukrainians and, all the rest of it. So that's where we are right now, guys. Okay. So you've got to look at what's happening as like a 4D, I guess maybe like a 4D chessboard. James is saying, Sean, listen to an expert yesterday. He said they can tap North Sea oil will take 3 months, so they should start now or will freeze this winter. Forget Ed Miliband. Yeah. Like, I don't know why we're not taking that oil now. Like, why are we not taking the oil? Paul Sullivan is saying, Sean, they sunk a US supply ship. Guess how much was on that ship? Wow. I didn't realize that, mate. I've not heard of that. Fixed Bayonets is saying, yes, like the Russian Poseidon submarines. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know this, but the Russians have fixed Bayonets saying, he said they have this submarine, it's called Poseidon. Totally automated, doesn't need to resurface for air, doesn't need to resurface for food. It's nuclear powered and it just cruises around. And I don't know where these things are now. Because these things are nuclear powered, they can move very slowly over a long period of time. So I would speculate that, well, if I was the Russians, I would definitely have one or at least 2 near the United Kingdom, because what that would do is, so imagine a nuclear weapon underwater as a drone, right? An underwater nuclear drone. When these things come close to the tide, close to the shore, they'll cause a tsunami, like a radioactive tsunami. Googlinos is saying 1 Turkish soldier and 2 personnel from, I can't pronounce that word, something DC was killed when a helicopter crashed in Qatar during a training flight due to a technical issue. See, right now, we don't know, you've got to take everything with what we're being told on the media. It's not always what's happening. Right, I'm literally just jumping down, guys. Just jumping down. Old School is saying, why would a military move that stuff all at once? I'm no expert, but even I know just don't do that. Chickens and baskets come to mind. I'm going to assume you're talking about let me try and find this. 58 billion ammo lost. Right, I can't find the article about the stuff that's been sank. 4 Paws is saying like and share. Thank you, 4 Paws. Yeah, guys, listen, I don't do this as much as I should, but if you're on, can you please do me a massive favor? Hit those buttons down below, the like, comment, subscribe, the bell notification. Really helps me out when you guys do that. From day one, I've been telling you guys exactly what's coming with this conflict, and it's fascinating how out of their depth most people are. And look, the people in charge are absolutely out of their depths. You get these politicians, and look, it's not their fault. Look, it's absolutely not the politicians' fault that they don't know what they're talking about. Like, if you're a politician in the United Kingdom, your main role is to get paid as much money as possible. Your second role is to stay in office as long as possible. Your third role is to make sure your donors, you can find more donors. Your fourth role is to try and open and, get as much of your money outside the United Kingdom as possible. Your fifth role is to try and avoid paying as much tax as possible. So, like, it's not really, for people who are in charge in the United Kingdom right now, it's not really their, it's not really their main intent to know what they're talking about. Right, I'm just jumping to the bottom, guys. Sean, Israel is destroying their towns, completely destroyed, and parts of the cities. The population is marching currently against the government. Yeah, let me get this up. Right, so I'm just going to share this with you guys now, and I'll read it. So last night as well, there was huge strikes in Israel. So Iran strikes town near Israel key nuclear site. So like we said, at the beginnings, at the early stages of this conflict, look, the Iranians and the Russians are allies, right? They're allies. We can't be shocked. We can't be shocked. We can't be angry. You can't be angry. You can't be shocked. You can't be angry that if you're in a war with someone, they're trying to outsmart you and they're trying to use tactics that defeat your systems, right? That's kind of like what warfare is. So the Iranians and the Russians, they will clearly talk, and the supreme leader or the defense minister or whatever in Iran, whoever that title is, he will have spoken to his Russian counterpart and he'll have said, "Hello, mate. How do we defeat these Patriot missiles?" And the Russians will have said, "Oh, it's quite easy. You can't really defeat them because they're so advanced. So just fire a shit ton of cheap drones, let them use all their Patriot missiles, and then once they're depleted, they don't have any missiles left, and then you can fire, your, your good stuff." Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So early on in this conflict, and again, like the conflict in Ukraine, when this happens and you get NATO forces fighting conscripts, early on, there's going to be wins. There's going to be a lot of wins. There's going to be a lot of ground taken back. There's going to be some headlines on the news. Powerful headlines. But then over time, with conscripts, the sheer weight and mass and industrialization of war, it's going to start to push people back. So I'll just read you the headline on this, guys, okay? Iran strikes towns near Israel's key nuclear site. At least 180 people wounded. The Israeli Ministry of Health says at least 180 people have been wounded in Iranian missile attacks on the southern city of Dimona. So Dimona is where the Israelis have their main, I think it's their, I don't know if it's their main, but it's certainly a big nuclear power plant. home to the country's main nuclear facility and nearby Iraq, one of the most dramatic escalations since the US-Israel war began. Iranian state television framed Saturday's strikes as a response to Iran's attack on Natanz nuclear enrichment complex earlier in the day, marking a stark new phase in the tit-for-tat targeting. Now this conflict is in its fourth week. So, like yesterday, I was talking about this, and we really are looking at this tsunami. This tsunami is coming, guys. Nobody can stop it. There's nothing. Nobody can stop what's coming, right? It was always going to be this way. And it's why I think, I would much rather have Donald Trump there. At least he does at least he's quite funny. If it wasn't Trump, it would be Biden. If it wasn't Biden, it'd be Hillary Clinton or somebody else. We'd still be in the same thing, right? Although I think if it wasn't Donald Trump in charge, I think there would be, I think boots on the ground would have already happened. So this is a statement now from the Israeli military, all right? So an Israeli military spokesman said air defense systems were activated during the attack, but failed to intercept some of the missiles. So I think we're starting to see a new I think we're starting to see a new aspect now. I think there's been a lot of air defense and it's been depleted. Firing up at cheap drones, $20,000. And you can imagine, can't you, someone sat there. Is what I would do. Remember, the Iranians have had 40 years to prepare for this. They've had 40 years watching US tactics, I guess Israeli tactics, Western tactics, watching how they wage war and thinking, right, okay, how do we defeat this? With the help from the Russians, potentially the help from the Chinese. There's some smart people there, right? There's some smart people. So it's an absolute no-brainer, right? It's an absolute no-brainer. You would use your cheap stuff first. You would send those cheap drones. It's like what the Russians are going to do. So the Russians will use this same tactic. They are, the Russian. This is Russian tactics, basically, where you don't send the good stuff. You send the cheap conscripts. And once everything's been depleted, that's when you send the good stuff. Googling us is saying more than 170 Royal Navy sailors serving in the elite submarine force. I don't know what an elite submarine force is. Have you ever seen a submariner? They're big guys. More than 170 Royal Navy sailors serving in the elite nuclear submarine force have been caught using drugs over the past 7 years. Wow. I mean, what else do you do on those submarines? Projects is saying, Sean, what do you mean nuke sub deployed? So I mean exactly that. Hang on, give me a second, I'll share it. Nuclear Royal Navy submarine arrives in the Arabian Sea. So that's where I'm getting that from. This is a nuclear-powered submarine. Nuclear-powered Royal Navy submarine has arrived in the Arabian Sea. With it, the capacity to launch missiles on Iran if required. Toffee Man is saying, the trouble is people include some of my including some of my family, don't know how serious the Islamic threat is. Yeah, a lot of people don't. They have buried their heads in the sand. I'm 65 and they will not listen. Yeah, we're going to find out very soon. We are going to find out very soon about this. Can you guys remember? Can you guys remember back on the 28th? Can you remember the? Let me try and find it. Let me try and find a thing on X. Give me a second. What am I doing? Let me try and find a video because it's. I want to find Keir Starmer's. Oh, there we are. Is this him? Yeah. So let me share this with you guys. So can you guys remember when these strikes went in and Keir Starmer, every time he got a chance, and every time Keir Starmer got a chance, he would tell people that Britain were not involved in these strikes on Iran.
Iftar and to do it for the second year running. And I know that we won't be alone here. Up and down the country, families and communities have been coming together throughout Ramadan, welcoming neighbours of all faiths and of none, strengthening the bonds of community.
Oh, right. Anyway, basically, every time when these strikes first went in on the 28th of February, every time a British politician was on the media, and they were asked about anything, they had this look of fear in their eyes, this absolute look of fear in their eyes. They would look at someone, they would look and they would say, they would all go the party line. Britain had no involvement in these strikes. And they would look terrified. Now, I'm going to speculate that behind the scenes, they had counter-terrorism liaison, they had special branch, they had special forces teams, they had units that don't even have names, all giving briefings and saying, listen, it's about to pop off in Britain. One wrong word and we could see stabby, rammy, the likes we've never seen before. And that's one of the reasons. That's, as Toffee Man is saying, the trouble is people, including my family, don't know how serious the Islamist threat is. And I agree. People really don't understand it. And those people that do understand it, they get they get called racist, right? If people talk about this threat, they naturally get branded as racists. Charles Darwin, the real Charles Darwin, is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Starmer postponed elections last year, and this. So guys, did anyone, right? I'm pretty sure I saw something on X say like this morning saying that Keir Starmer says there needs to be another lockdown in May. With this meningitis thing, I don't know if it's going to be the case. However, a good way to calm everyone down, stop people using fuel, keep people in their homes and not have elections is to have another lockdown. And I was talking about this last night, just for context, so everybody knows. 6 years and 66 days from Britain going into the first lockdown. That brings us to the 28th of May. Just saying, guys. I'm just saying. Googleinos is saying horror as car slams into a suburban property, leaving 1 dead and 5 injured. Right, I can only assume that's in America. Is that in America? Right, Sydney, in West Sydney. Police were called to Stewart Road in West Sydney shortly after 5:20 p.m. on Sunday, following reports an SUV had crashed into a residential property and was stuck in a tree. Okay, I'm looking at the pictures of this. This does look like I don't think this is a. I think this is drink driving. Google it. Sorry, Paul is saying, like him or not, he did not abandon the boat like Farage, who ran to Trump only to be sent packing in a crisis. Farage would. Okay, what? I don't know who we're talking about there. James is saying, now Trumpy had made this threat. And that's the thing about threats. James, you are 100% correct, buddy. Once you make a threat, you have to follow it through, right? Because if you make a threat and don't follow it through, if you make a threat and you don't follow it through, nobody listens to you. Like, it's like, when the kids are playing up, right? When the kids are playing up and you say, right, you keep doing that and you're going on the 5-kilometer walk. If they keep doing it and you don't take them on the 5-kilometer walk, the next time you say, right, stop doing that or we're going on the 5-kilometer walk, they don't listen to you, right? So you have to follow through with these threats. Both sides. If you guys have tried, I think I've got this up. Hang on. I think I've still got it up. Yeah. So this is what we're talking about. So this is what James is talking about here. Donald Trump made this threat. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, we're going to give them 48 hours from this exact point, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. If you're going to make these threats, you absolutely have to follow these through. Absolutely have to follow these through. And I will say right now that the Iranians will just be laughing. The Iranians will be saying, like, yeah, do what you want, Donald. You've given us your best shot. You've sent over your stealth bombers. You've been absolutely obliterating us. Go for it. Like, literally go for it. That's what I'd say. I'd say, yeah, we're waiting. Let's go. And this brings us back again to the constant changing rhetoric in this conflict, right? So initially, this conflict was to destroy and degrade Iran's nuclear capacity, right? It was to destroy their long-range missile capacity, and it was to destroy their navy. And then after a couple of days, we were told that's done. I think, are we on the 4th week now? Are we on week 4? I think we may actually be on week 4. Not 4 weeks, but like just over 3 weeks. Mission creep, the target packs have expanded. Like a couple of days ago, Donald Trump was saying we've destroyed all their long-range missile capacities, and then they fire at Diego Garcia, which is actually a lot longer, a lot further than anyone considered they had the ability, right? So that makes Donald Trump look silly, because when he's coming out there and he's saying, yep, they don't have any long-range missile capability anymore, and then they fire a long-range missile longer with a capacity to go even further than anyone even considered. Again, this could be grey warfare. This could be asymmetric warfare. This could be a scenario where, the Iranians say, right, what can we do? What can we do? Okay, right. Let's fire 2 missiles in the direction of Diego Garcia. Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean. Let's fire them in that direction, and then they will clearly get intercepted. However, it will make everybody think that we have long-range missiles. That may be the case. That could be the case. But what this is clearly proving is, the United States said initially, it's done, it's over, we're about to leave. Then they said, our military objectives are complete. We're going to leave, but the other countries need to sort out the Strait of Hormuz. And then literally hours later, Donald Trump saying you better open it up within 48 hours or we're going to take out your power plants. Not ending well, ladies and gentlemen. And this, this conflict, the spread of this conflict, it's happening a lot quicker. And best case, and if everything stops right now, this would still be getting worse for maybe 6-12 months, because it's going to take time to rebuild this infrastructure. Clarendon has just said, just seeing Keir Starmer can ruin my day immediately. Yeah, I turned it off, guys. I turned it off. I turned it off because I could tell people were getting triggered. Right, let me turn that off and stop sharing. Donkey Knee Darko is saying, I had a dream. A mountain turned into a hug bear and I leaped over the people, then disappeared 2 years ago. Okay. Yeah, look, guys, okay, I am going to start to close this live stream down now. I started it a little bit early because I've got to go and do a task. So just, I'll be back. I will be back on later on today. Just don't listen to people on the mainstream media. They don't know what they're talking about. They really don't. The war's going to go on. It's going to go on until someone has lost and someone's won. I don't think the United States military can lose. They can't lose. But can they win? The United States military, Iran cannot threaten America. There's no, America can't be threatened by anyone. So the United States can't lose. The question is, can the United States win? What is a win? Now we're into these questions. These are the real questions that people should be asking. What is a win? If the United States say, right, we've completed our military objectives, we're leaving, and they leave, and then the Iranians say, no, and then the Iranians just start firing missiles at everyone, which they would do. What does that mean? I don't think people understand how inevitable boots on the ground is. There's no way you can't have boots on the ground. And the only way to stop this is to have boots on the ground. That's going to be a long, drawn-out conflict. 3 years, guys. 3 years. But trust me, this is going nowhere for 3 years. So if you live in the United Kingdom, the tsunami is coming. That tsunami from the Middle East is coming 100%. Now, But don't worry. Because you won't be thinking about that, because you'll be thinking about what's coming in Ukraine. The Ukraine conflict is going to flare up again, and that's going to force politically it makes sense, financially it makes sense. I know that doesn't make financially it makes sense to push troops into Ukraine, because then you can raise taxes and say, oh, we've got a war, we need to win this war. Yeah, so look, guys, just grow stuff. I know that sounds off topic, but just try and grow as much as you can right now, because the price of everything is going to go absolutely unbelievable. What a fantastic comment. Dude named Brent is saying, when in doubt, ignore the government and grow some potatoes. I agree. Grow some potatoes. Right, listen, guys, I'm going to close this down. I'll jump on as soon as I've done my task and I'm back. I'll jump on and I'll give a midday update to what's going on in the Middle East. Okay, it's not it's not winding down. It's only escalating. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will catch you guys later.